We're live, Mike.
We're good.
We're live, yeah.
Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Rockland Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, December 6, 2022. Please be advised that this open meeting is being broadcast live and recorded for playback by WRPS at youtube.com/WRPS Rockland. Please go to www.WRPSRockland.com for further information. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Chief, can you start us off? To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First on the agenda, community announcements, town administrator video series. Doug?
Thank you, Mike. Just a reminder for the board and the community that I am starting a new video series, so if any folks from the community have any questions at all about local government, I encourage them to email me at the email address, which is taqna@rockland-ma.gov. I've only done one video so far. It was with Chief Duffy. We focused on the new building project, but again, I'm happy to try to answer any questions that folks in the community might have, so I encourage people to reach out to me. Next, I wanted to read a complaint, sort of a concern that I received from someone in the community, and it's not the first time I've had this complaint, so I wanted to read it for the public, partly as a sort of a plea to the community to try to refrain from some of this. So I'll just read this. It's pretty short. Good morning, Mr. Lapp. I'm writing to you about the endless amount of items that are consistently left on sidewalks in Rockland. I don't know why homeowners think it is okay to leave couches, love seats, dressers, and many more items out and blocking sidewalks. It's so frustrating to live on the South Shore, which to me is known for its beauty all around us. I get that maybe putting something out for a day or two may be useful to someone, but when it becomes a hazard to take a walk down the street with your dog, it is frustrating. I don't know why this is accepted so easily in this town, except that people have become so used to it that it is okay. I know it is also due to landlords not taking care of their property too. I hope there's something to be done so that we can say, yes, I live in Rockland with pride. I know I cannot be the only person that feels like this. So, yes, we do get complaints like this. It is difficult for us to police. Our building inspector and our health agent do their very best to get people to get things off the curb after a day or two. So, again, just a plea to the community. There's a lot of pride in this town. I know that. I've witnessed it on countless occasions, and I would just encourage folks to not leave items out more than a day or so. Once that time has passed, it's time for you to dispose of it properly. So I just wanted to read that, read that concern and to let folks know about it. And then my last announcement, I just thought I'd quickly read the winter street parking ban from the police chief. This was a press release that the chief put out recently. Chief Nicholas Zioli announces that the all-night winter parking ban will take effect on all public streets and roads in the town of Rockland starting on Thursday, December 1st at 1:30 a.m. Residents and visitors will not be allowed to park any vehicle on a public street within the town for more than 1 hour between the hours of 12:30 a.m. and 6 a.m. Courtesy tags will be given out during the first week of the ban as a reminder. Beginning on Thursday, December 8th at 1:30 a.m., parking violations may be issued, and parking tags for a violation is $25. There may also be times during the winter months when vehicles may be towed without prior warning due to excessive snowfall accumulation and the need for the Rockland Highway Department to clear the streets of snow. The fine for impeding snow removal on a public way is $50, and your vehicle may be towed at the owner's expense. The Rockland Police Department asks for the cooperation of both residents and visitors during the upcoming winter months. So I just wanted to remind folks about that, and that's all I have, Mike.
Thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda, minutes. Review and approval of minutes of November 15, 2022.
Motion to approve the minutes of November 15th, 2022.
I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion in 2 seconds. All those in favor? Unanimous. Next on the agenda, new business, license renewals. Okay, who wants to volunteer to read? Anyone?
Gotta find out what page it's on.
It's in between A and D.
Oh, is it? Okay,
Thanks to
thank
my
you.
binder.
Oh, there it is.
I guess we're just starting.
Yep.
Pending all obligations have been met. Common vehicular Just help.
Victular.
Victular. Harmon Golf Course, 168 Concord Street. Top Shelf Bistro, 120 Bill Delahunt Parkway. 99 Restaurant, 29 Acord Drive. Dunkin' Donuts, 851 Hingham Street. Dunkin' Donuts, 1149 Hingham Street. Banner Pub, Hotel Thomas, 167 Union Street. Oriental Express, 8 West Water Street. Minero's The Steakhouse, 371 Union Street. Rockland House of Pizza, 197 Union Street. Doubletree Rockland, 929 Hingham Street. Themis Pizza, 488 Market Street. Porter's Pub, 363 Union Street. Seasons Cafe, 938 Hingham Street. Roy's Kebabs, 928 Hingham Street. Corner Grill Pizza, 312 Union Street. Automatic Amusement, Banner Pub, Hotel Thomas, 167 Union Street. Porter's Pub, 363 Union Street. Fraternal Order of Eagles, 29 Park Street. Entertainment, Harmon Golf Course, 168 Concord Street. 99 Restaurant, 29 Acord Park Drive. Banner Pub, Hotel Thomas, 167 Union Street. Doubletree Rockland, 929 Hingham Street. Porter's Pub, 363 Union Street. Fraternal Order of Eagles, 29 Park Street. Inn Holder, Banner Pub, Hotel Thomas, 167 Union Street. Doubletree Rockland, 929 Hingham Street. Comfort Inn, 850 Hingham Street. Lodging, 5 Union Street Realty Trust, 5 Union Street. 92 Church Street LLC, 92 Church Street. Class 1. Leisure Woods, 31 Leisure Woods Drive. Live Oaks, 680 Union Street. Ira Volvo Cars South Shore, 1030 Hingham Street. Class 2. Fader Motors, 15 Bishop Lane. Andrade Auto Service and Sales, 250 Webster Street. Lou's Auto Body, 577 Market Street. Trust Petroleum, 104 Market Street. McGee Auto, 511 Union Street. And AMZ Auto Center, 240 Center Ave.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve all licenses pending all obligations have been met.
So moved.
I got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all those in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. Okay. Right on time. Okay, entertain a motion to enter into the FY23 classification hearing, or are we going to hold off on that? Deb,
No,
do you?
we'll
Enter into the hearing? Okay.
Open the
All
hearing,
right.
yep.
So we'll open the hearing, entertain a motion to open the FY23 classification hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Those in favor? Roll call. Selectman Childs?
Yes.
Selectman Shortall? Selectman Needham?
Yes.
Selectman Nyman?
Yes.
And myself. Okay. Deb, welcome.
Hello, how are you all
Welcome back.
today? As most of you know, I did retire, but I'm like a bad penny, I keep showing up. I want to apologize for the lateness that you've gotten your classification hearing packet this year. We've had some issues, not for anyone's fault, from our vendor because they had a lot of COVID this fall. I know I was one that had also to have it, so I know that it's put a lot of us back in work. So, and the DOR has been a little short-staffed also during the fall. But we did manage to get, excuse me, we did manage to get all of our LA reports into the DOR today, our sales, our growth, our assessment classification report, our LA4. So we are going to, we do have a packet ready for you, so we're gonna go over it. I should introduce Rachel Carlisle, who is the new Director of Assessing, the board members. So we're gonna go over the packet and ask you to vote on the 3 questions this evening. But we would like to possibly, because our LA4 is not, usually when I come before you, the LA4 is approved, and we can just go through the packet and we can vote, and that's it. but we'll have to come back to you. So we'll have to be able to give you the excess levy capacity once the accounting is done also. So if, I spoke to Doug earlier, I don't know if Doug discussed with you at all. So we'd like to, if there's a possibility for 3 of you to meet with us next week, so that we can get the process, so we're not late getting our tax rate set and all. So if, before the end of the meeting, if we could do that, we can look at that. But I'll kind of share with Rachel, we'll kind of turn it over to the class, to the packet we have here with you, and kind of explain to you what's been happening in the world of assessments.
So on the first page, the very first page, we have the total valuation of the town. We have 81% is residential, and about 19% is the commercial, industrial, and personal property, which really hasn't changed since past years. The total valuation did go up about 15% from FY '22. And then it's in, we have a nice pie chart. So after the chart, on the next page, we have the growth is an important part to point out. We're about 200,000 over what we estimated due to commercial growth. And then this number, we're still waiting for the maximum allowable levy limit. We're still waiting for the final numbers, so it's estimated right now. Anything? Okay, and then the most important thing on this page is the estimated tax rate is 15.24.
If we go with the maximum
Maximum.
allowable levy, which we won't know until we get with accounting and see where we are, but the maximum of the tax rate would be 15.24.
So the next page, it shows the difference between fiscal year 2022 and 2023. The uniform tax rate, it is down 9% from last year's, which was 1675. Our average single-family home went up 14.88%. We're at 446,931. And then our average tax bill is up 4.5%, which is $6,811.23.
So every year we give you the impact of a split tax rate. Nothing has changed from last year. Like Rachel said, we're basically at the same percentage we've been for the past couple of years, 81 and 19. We do figure out a 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5, 10, 15, 20% shift to give you some idea of what would happen. And I probably sound like a broken record, but in order to save the residential class 5%, you'd have to, and no one ever shifts 20% on their first go-around, but you'd have to shift 20% and have a burden of additional 20% on the commercial to save the residential 5%. So the Board of Assessors met just before the classification hearing, and they voted to recommend a single tax rate for this year.
Any questions from the board? Any comments? Laura, do you have a question? Or if it's
I'm thinking.
Mike, maybe while the board's thinking, Deb, do you want to just highlight a little bit what the 3 votes are, so they know sort of what you're expecting them to vote tonight versus what's going to wait till the next meeting that we have?
Okay, so I checked with I checked with Hanson before we came in because they had the same scenario last week. They weren't approved and they had to kick out for another week. So they did vote on their 3 questions, the first go-around. They came back for 5 or 10 minutes tonight, in fact, and they, just updated, because we're assuming that the DOR is going to approve everything as we've given you. Generally speaking, they do, but, we have to make sure that they have approved it, and we'll give you the excess, we always have to give excess levy capacity. So the 3 votes are whether to keep a uniform tax rate for a small commercial exemption, which which the board does not recommend, and of course, towns like Boston, have a residential exemption, which, we would never even think about in Rockland, because most of our people are residential, so that wouldn't work. So those are the 3 votes: residential exemption, small commercial exemption, and tax factor.
Anybody from the board have any questions, comments? Okay, anybody from the public, any questions or comments in this public hearing? Okay, seeing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Well, hang on a second.
No.
I think we're
No, we
going to
take
want
the
to
vote.
continue it for this other, for the
next part.
for the next part of it, so I would
Or
not
to
adjourn.
move to continue it, though.
Sure.
All right, so I'll make a motion to move to continue the public hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Roll call, Selectman Childs?
Yes.
Selectman Shortall? Selectman Needham?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Nyman?
Yes.
Okay, so the public hearing is continued. And now I will entertain a motion that the town of Rockland does not adopt a residential exemption for fiscal year 2023.
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second? Oh, that was the second. All those in favor? That's unanimous. I'll make a motion for the town of Rockland to adopt a residential factor of 1, a single tax rate for fiscal year 2023.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Unanimous. And I make a motion that the town of Rockland does not adopt the small commercial exemption for fiscal year 2023.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay.
Mike, can I say
Yep,
something
go
else?
ahead.
Is that all right? Just because I know Deb and Rachel threw a lot of information out, and also for the public's benefit. So, we have a very small assessing department. It's just 3 people in total, so they don't do every single part of the appraising themselves. There's private contractors they hire to do, especially the valuation on the commercial properties. And so because of the stuff that Deb talked about earlier with COVID and other delays outside of the town's department, that was the cause of the delay to get the information to us, which then delayed their ability to get the information to the Department of Revenue, and the Department of Revenue needs to approve that before you can have that final approval, which we'll do at the next meeting. So I just want to make sure that was clear. And if you don't mind, I think it would be helpful while everybody's in the room, if we could just pick a day and a time right now. If you don't want to do that, we could try to do it after, but I know it's often hard. I think it'll be a pretty quick
Yeah,
meeting.
10 minutes.
5 or 10 minutes. And you're thinking Wednesday or Thursday next week? Is that
Yeah,
what you were
Wednesday
thinking?
would be great if they could do it Wednesday.
Is that okay?
I checked with Scott, and the town accountant, and he
Is that
said
the
Wednesday
14th?
would be good.
That is the Wednesday, yes, the 14th. Good if I look at the right week, yes.
And what time are we thinking?
You're thinking like in the afternoon?
Yeah, any time that's good for you is good for us. We could do 4, 4:30, 5, whatever works for you.
Is everybody available on Wednesday at any of those times?
Yeah, the thing with the high school,
What time is that?
that's it, 30, I think.
That's at 6, I thought.
Or
Yeah,
so.
we should be fine at 4:30.
Oh, wait, hang on.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, that was 5, but that's 5 o'clock. You're right, 5.
So we can probably get through it if we do 4:30.
4:30?
Yeah, we'll be fine.
4:30 Wednesday?
All right, so Wednesday, the 14th, 4:30. Great, thank you.
Okay. Donna, does that work for you? We good? Okay. So we are all set?
Thank you so much.
Deb.
We'll come back.
See you on
We'll-
Wednesday.
We'll come back next week.
Okay, next on the agenda, Board of Sewer Commissioners Chairman, Chuck Hession. Chuck?
Mike, while Chuck's coming up, if I can do a quick introduction, if that's
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah, come on, Chuck.
Go right ahead, Chuck. I just wanted to tee it up for you. It was brought to our attention from Chuck, the chairman of the Sewer Commission, that there have been some serious problems with the generator at the sewer plant, which Mr. Hessian will explain in more detail. We went back and forth quite a bit trying to look at ways to fund the replacement of the generator. Obviously, the sewer plant is critical infrastructure, and we can't afford to have any sustained downtime with the operations there. As Chuck and I were going back and forth on different options, obviously we can't sign a contract to acquire a new generator unless we actually have the funds to be able to pay for it, and we can't sign contracts now with the hope that something might pass at town meeting later. So going back and forth with Chuck, and he's provided a lot of information here in your packet as far as previous expenses and repairs that have been made. The only thing that I could think of that could be immediate would be potentially using ARPA funding. And I put in your packet, it should be right before letter D, is the listing of the ARPA uses that we've talked about before. We do have some funding left through the county portion of our ARPA allocation, which roughly, generally, we've talked about setting aside for water and sewer needs. But this is the only source of funding I can think of that we can activate immediately. The only other source would be town funds like the stabilization fund, which would require a special town meeting and 2/3 vote at town meeting and all that. So this, because it's grant funding, does not require town meeting votes. So I just wanted to talk just generally about that, and I'll leave it to Chuck to get into the details.
Welcome.
Thank you for getting me on the agenda so with such short notice. I want to give you a brief. Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to make a motion to open the sewer commissioners meeting. Do I have a second? Second. Oh, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you. Just want to give you a brief update on the generator. It was originally installed in '77, so it's 45 years old. Preventive maintenance is currently being performed by New England Generator, who maintains the town's school and highway department generators. Before that, it was done for 20 years by a company, I think Hub, who went out of business. Since 2005, in that package, as near as I could come up with, the department has spent $67,000 in repairs. Since October 22nd, we've had to spend an additional $20,000 in a rental replacement, which is $9,800 a month. The generator went out of service the end of September for a water pump, but because the generator is so old and it's not made any longer, you know, secondary parts on the market are non-existent, if hard to find at all. An attempt was going to be made to rebuild the existing water pump, but the firm was really worried that they would crack the manifold where it was so old, and that's when I contacted Doug, and he gave us our options. I also made note that this would usually take an 12 to 16-week lead time to get a replacement. Rick, our operator down at the plant, found a generator similar to what we would need on a cancellation order, so it's readily available. Veolia would be willing to pay for it until we could write an article for approval in May and pay them in July. And as Mr. Lapp said, that was, you know, the Chapter 30 would be longer than that. We told the firm to try to get that manifold water pump off, and I found out today, just late this afternoon, they were able to get the water pump off, but the gaskets are gone and it needs a new engine. If you remember, the generator was identified as a serious cause of concern for failure in the RIPS report. And we had started to prepare a bid scope when Ms. Childs told us about the ARPA funds, and that brings us to where we are today.
Chuck, what's the cost of the generator?
I want to say installed, everything, pad included, I was quoted 189.9 if I remember, but I'm going to say 200,000 to round it off. I don't think it'll be more than that.
Doug, this would be subject to, still be subject to the bid process, right?
You're right. So that, and this is sort of the whole point. So this would have the funding available, but we'd still have to go out to bid. Presumably, what Mr. Hessian described, where there is, one available, like, I imagine that would be the low bidder.
Should be.
But we have to follow the Chapter
Absolutely.
149 public construction law.
And I do have a spec that I could supply Mr. Lapp as soon as he's ready for it.
So how long has the generator been at a point where it hasn't been working? Would you say last summer?
Oh, since I really, before my time.
Okay. Is the replacement of the generator on the capital plan? And have you
It
talked
was
to-
going to be on, yes, it was
Okay.
going to be on there. That and the
Okay.
pump station if we had the funds.
Okay. So I will say, just try to make sure anything that you can foresee, if you guys, during one of your sewer meetings, if you guys see things that are coming towards the end of life, try to get them onto the capital plan, just so that it goes through that step.
We're
Yeah.
making, we were
I know,
very
you guys are making
focused.
great strides. You guys are doing a lot, but
No, we were making, so you understand, we were really focused on that November 30th submittal.
Mm-hmm.
We have come up with action. We're meeting once a week for 2 hours,
Mm-hmm.
2 hours a day. So we're trying to come up with a list of what we need along with Rick.
So I think as you do come up with it, though, just try to get it to the capital planning department,
Will do.
because what they end up doing is they'll approve it for town meeting and stuff like that. So one of the policies that we have is that if it's not on the capital plan and it's over $50,000, the finance committee won't support it at town meeting. So just to protect yourselves, so that you don't have to go through unnecessary meetings, like while the warrant is being constructed, get to the capital planning as quick as you can with whatever stuff you guys
Will do.
might have. Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Chuck?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that a brand-new generator is what, around 300,000?
It's close to, yes.
Yeah, okay, so.
This one really is.
So this one's available because the engineering firm that currently has it, had it for a job that didn't go through, so it's just kind of sitting around. And getting it for 190?
I think it's 190, and
Yeah.
I tacked on another 100 for the
It
electrical
seems like a
installation.
no-brainer,
Yeah,
you
anybody?
know?
Anybody
So-
have any other questions or comments for Chuck?
When do you expect to install it?
Depending on the funding.
Well, I mean, the funding's available now, but they have to go through the bid
They have to do the
process.
bidding.
So it's going to take several weeks. You have to do the proper advertising and all that. So I imagine, I'm guessing like a month.
I
depending
would
on
say
how-
whenever that's done, probably 2 months, and again, would be dependent on weather.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm not entirely sure that we need a formal vote or just a general consensus, but I think ceremoniously we should take a formal
Yeah.
vote as to our intentions, our willingness to use ARPA funding to support the purchase of the generator for the sewer plant. So
Yep.
if anybody wants to make a motion?
Make a motion to support using ARPA funds to pay for the new generator for the sewer department.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Thank you very
Unanimous.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
Jeff.
Thanks, Doug.
You got a motion? Are you a second? You guys closed? Good.
All right,
Thank you.
very good.
Next on the agenda, budget update. Doug.
Thanks, Mike. I'll keep this very quick. I did put the budget calendar that we talked about earlier in your packet. So I just want to let you know that I have been working with the town accountant on some very preliminary revenue forecasts. At your next meeting on the 20th, in order to meet the December 31st deadline, we will present a budget to you, as is normally the case. It'll be in deficit. It'll be very preliminary with everybody's budget requests, and then we'll work on it from there. The town accountant has sent out the budget request forms to all the department heads. I've also sent out the capital forms to all the various departments, so we will be collecting those, sharing them with the capital planning committee. And then we'll also start looking at what free cash might look at, and then start putting everything together. I've also met with Dr. Cron and Jane Hackett, again, very preliminarily, and as is usually the case, all eyes are going to be looking at state aid, especially Chapter 70. That'll be critical. Given that state revenues are so good, and they've had such a large surplus that they actually sent everybody, partial refunds, we are hoping, cautiously optimistic, that we will have a good year with state aid. It's always a mixed blessing, as I've said in the past, in Rockland. We get a lot of state aid, so that's a great thing, that it helps taxpayers, but the double-edged sword is if the state doesn't deem fit to give us as much as we hoped, then our budget takes a big hit. We're a lot more reliant on it than other towns. So I just want to give you that update that we are on track with our budget calendar, and the next meeting we'll have a very rough preliminary budget.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on. FY '23, Highway Superintendent Snow Stipend Approval. Dave Taylor?
And I asked Dave also to give us just a general update as well first before you get to that item. Thank you.
Sounds good. Dave, welcome.
Hi, Lauren.
Very well.
So we're wrapping up road work this week, so obviously a little longer than usual, but we had some issues on Spring and Beach, some drainage issues. So we are milling the trenches, the gas trenches, and paving this week, so that will be the last big job of the year. We usually wait a year on any gas trenches or any trenches to let the settlement, and then that's where we're at right now, so. We just finished up the curbing and sidewalks on Spring Street as well. Started on Beach Street, and we'll be finishing up that project next year. So, did you touch base on the MassWorks grant?
I was going to talk about it toward the end of the
Okay.
meeting. Yeah.
And then we're actually working on some winter repair projects, which was a small grant that we got from the state, $170,000. So that's where we're going to do the trenches this week on Beach Street with, and then some patching throughout the town for winter projects. So, and then we're starting to get ready for snow. Last month before that starts flying. So, it's pretty much it right now. Any questions on anything? Or?
Any questions for Dave? Comments?
Yeah, I had a question. I know we talked about this before, but the flashers on the rail trail are not working because
Yeah, we've
it's
had
being
an
held up by National Grid. A lot of-
ongoing issue with National
Yeah.
Grid on that area. They've had a lot of turnover within the company, so we've been between liaisons. So we had our liaison come back next month. We started that January of this year. Somehow the permitting got pushed off, and then they needed new permitting. So we just sent in some updated permitting a few months ago. So it's just a matter of them coming out. Bell Traffic has the devices in hand. We had the other ones that just got hit, rehabbed, order another set of devices just to have them on standby in case this happens again. So keep in mind, those have gone up considerably from the last cost, like we did over at the school project 3 years ago. Those devices were $20,000 a piece. Now they're close to $40,000 a piece. So they've, the devices to buy a set of them just to have them on reserve, $40,000 to $50,000. So, but that's where we're at right now.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
also we have the funding for the CPA grants on Vernon and Howard, which we already started the permitting process on that, and we'll be moving forward with that project next summer. So that'll be everything on the rail trail lit with the sensor bollards, with the override system
Yeah.
for the push button on the RFP. So
Yeah, thanks. I get a lot of residents asking me about that.
yeah, it's been an
So-
ongoing process, and
Yeah.
we were dealing with somebody new every few months, and
Oh.
yeah, it's been crazy. So,
Okay.
and we just got the devices so they're able to be put back up,
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago, and now we're going to move forward with it.
Okay,
So,
great.
yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. So we'll just move on to the additional pay for snow removal. This is something that we started doing for Dave back in 2021.
Yep.
David brought it to our attention, the amount of extra time that he was working, or I shouldn't say extra time, but the amount of time that he was working regular hours, having already worked a full workday for snow removal during snowstorms, obviously. Now, one of the things that we took into consideration when we first gave this to Dave was the fact that Dave operates the front-end loader during these storms, and the typical front-end loader person that would be operating it typically makes about $80, $85 per hour. Dave is doing this for the town at a discount of It's $50 per hour. The other portion that we considered as well was if the storm happened during regular business hours, then that would not be part of, that would not be taken into consideration. If Dave was, typically working a 7 to 4 workday and he wound up just being there 7 to 5, that's not really considered. But if he worked a full day and then he comes back and has to work the overnight and then go back the next day, a lot of his guys are out there making overtime, and for him being a salary employee at that point, and the fact that he, instead of having to subcontract to somebody more expensive, it just made sense for the town to allow Dave to do this for us. Dave, you want to add anything to that? Or did I get
No,
it?
I typically, usually during snow operations, I'm in the center, so I'm typically in charge of the center, leave the center, and then check out the quadrants. The town's divided up into 9 quadrants, and I'll hop around and just make sure everything's going on. Most of our crews are pretty self-reliant at this point, so I'll center my operations in the, town center, from West Water Street up to North Ave, and, we remove that typically during a storm, small storm. We truck it right out during the storm so we don't have it sitting in the bump outs anymore. So, includes the loading out and moving it out of the town so we don't have any issues, in the future with it, so.
If I may, I just would like to say, each year, you and your team do an extraordinary job on the roads, and more often than not, the feedback that I get from other towns is that they wish that they had as good a team, or at least as quick results, as expeditious as your team is able to work together. So I just want to thank you for that.
I appreciate that. Like I said, we have, a very good group, between highway and parks, and those are they're divided up into quadrants at this point. And we have, team leaders at those quadrants, and the same subcontractors have been at those areas. So, and they take pride in their work, and you can see the difference when you're going over to different town lines. So.
Anybody else have any questions, comments for Dave? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the snow stipend for the highway superintendent.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you, I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Dave.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, next on the agenda, 2023 Town Hall Summer Schedule Update. Doug?
Thanks, Mike. As the board knows, for many years, long before I got here, the town has an alternative schedule where 10 months out of the year, 2 nights a month, we're open late. They coincide with the nights that we have board meetings. And then in the summer months, in July and August, we're not open late and we're closed on Fridays. And that's something we've worked out, with the unions to make sure that all the hours correlate. So sometimes the calendar just gets a little bit funky. So we have a plan. I just wanted to bring it to your attention, make sure you didn't have any major concerns. So this upcoming year, the 4th of July, is on a Tuesday. And so normally the first Friday off this year would be Friday, June 30th, would be a day off, and then Monday, Town Hall would be open, and then Tuesday would be closed, and it just seems a little cumbersome. So in your packet, I included an email that our HR Director, Stacy Callahan, sent around to department heads, checking to see what folks thought operationally about, instead of being off on Friday the 30th and then back on Monday and then closed on Tuesday, instead of that, working on Friday, June 30th, so Town Hall would be open, and then using that day off on Monday, July 3rd. So work Friday, June 30th, and then Town Hall would be closed Monday, July 3rd, and Tuesday, July 4th, and then we'd reopen on Wednesday, July 5th. So it seems to make more sense. There weren't any operational concerns raised from other departments. It's just a little different than has happened in the past, just because of the way the calendar works. So I just wanted to run it by you and make sure you didn't have any concerns.
Anybody have any questions or concerns?
Would our meeting fall on July 4th?
In the summer, we usually do like the 3rd Tuesday,
Yeah,
so it'll
Okay.
probably
Okay.
be,
There's only
Fine.
it'll be
one in
later.
July, yeah.
Okay, just checking.
You can go away, Lori. That weekend, yeah.
Yeah, I'm typically
I'm not
away
saying now.
that weekend.
Yeah, that sounded bad. Okay.
Great, thank you.
So next on the agenda, other new business not reasonably anticipated.
I have none.
Okay. Old business, Chalker versus Rockland et al. So obviously, I have a few things to say before I get into the official statement. First off, I just want to thank Chief Llewellyn, who stepped in and provided law and order at a time when law and order was exactly what the town needed. Jim Purcell, who served as interim town administrator and conducted himself with professionalism and class. I want to thank Doug and Jen Constable for believing in the town and taking a chance on coming here to help us rebuild our image. I want to thank Marcy Birmingham, Sue Ide, and Stacey Callahan for all the work they found thrust upon them. The three of them took on so many responsibilities and maintained continuity of the government. I also want to thank all the department heads for their professionalism throughout this entire ordeal. Rich Penny and Karen Iman, who stepped up to help move the town forward. Attorney Clifford for all of his legal counsel, as well as Jason Crotty and Justin Amos, our insurance counsel. Former Selectman Larry Ryan and Mike Mullen, for so many reasons I want to thank them, but mostly for staying united and being loyal friends and allies and hiring such crucial, in being such crucial parts to moving the town forward. Last but certainly not least, this has been very difficult on the town's reputation, but I want to thank the residents that supported us from the beginning of this ordeal and the residents that continue to support us today. So with that, the official statement on the Alan Chaka versus Town of Rockland matter is as follows. The Board of Selectmen is announcing that the federal litigation involving the town, former town administrator Alan Chaka, and former members of the Board of Selectmen Deirdre Hall and Edward Kimball has been resolved. The board's decision to agree to the settlement was motivated in large part by the fact that, and this is an important part, no additional taxpayer dollars were paid to any party, and that the entire settlement was funded by insurers involved in the litigation. With this matter behind us, we look forward to focusing all of our effort and attention on the important issues facing the town. As the settlement agreement contains provisions regarding confidentiality and non-disparagement, we will have no further comment on this matter. And with that, we will move on.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Wood.
just a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So you're saying the case involving Mr. Chaka is settled. The insurance company is paying whatever the costs are.
Mm-hmm.
That's all costs, reimbursement to Mr. Chaka, reimbursement of legal fees, court costs, all of the above?
All the costs, there is no cost being paid by the town of Rockland. Every cost involved in this case is being paid by legal counsel outside of the initial $10,000 insurance deductible that we paid 4 years ago when we hired legal counsel.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Did any of you have a chance to read John Ward's 22 Nevins Circle? Did any of you read the judicial summary that was issued?
yes.
Okay, so you are aware, the judge in that case, and I don't have it in front of me, but as I recall, he found for Mr. Chaka. And he found for Mr. Chaka because in his statement, the Board of Selectmen failed to follow the terms of the contract of Mr. Chaka and the town charter when in the dismissal of Mr. Chaka. In addition, the Board of Selectmen had been advised by town council to follow the charter and to follow the contract, which was not done according to the judge. And the judge in that case found for Mr. Chaka. So you all understand that?
Is there a question though, John?
No, do you all understand that? You all read that judicial summary? Did any of you read the judicial summary?
I said that I had, yes.
You did.
I did, yes.
The rest of you? No? I'll take that as a no. Okay. This whole episode, you're right, it was a trying time for the town. What this town was put through was despicable, in my opinion. But the failure, this was a slam dunk to terminate Mr. Chaka. And it was failure just to follow the basic contract and charter to do this. That's why there's a settlement. I imagine I was not involved with any of this stuff. But I'm, as a taxpayer, a voter, and a resident of this town, I'm just expressing my dismay at this whole procedure.
So that's obviously your opinion, John, and you're welcome to have your opinion.
That's the judge's opinion.
Oh, yeah, I understand, but there were no monetary,
Yeah,
damages
great.
awarded
Yeah.
to Mr. Chalker or anybody as a result of that opinion. As it was a procedural interpretation by the judge at the time,
Yeah.
that he felt as though it didn't meet, the contract. However, Mr. Chalker was paid out the entirety of his contract. That's what we followed the advice of town council at the time. So with that, as I said, we are, under a non-disparagement and confidentiality agreement. I can't speak any more of this.
Anybody have any idea how much we spent in legal fees for fiscal year '22?
Okay, John, I'm going to stop this because, I
Well,
think-
you don't, obviously. Try north of $250,000 for two law firms. $250,000 in fiscal year '22, but it's a separate issue.
Well, there's
a lot
there's-
going on here, Mike,
there-
that needs to be
there-
checked out.
And, I agree, and I know you've always been very cooperative with the board anytime I've ever asked you for any information. So, with that being said, you're more than welcome to, meet with myself and Doug at any time. Attorney Galvin, I'm sure, has reached out to you in the past. If you have any concerns of, ethical violations, you know the number for the ethics
I'm
hotline
not
as well.
talking ethics, I'm just talking good business sense.
So from a business standpoint, we budget $200,000 a year for legal, and there have been multiple lawsuits against the town. And one of the things that I always continue to try to do in my position is try to prevent lawsuits from coming to the town. However, a lot of these suits have occurred prior to the election of any of the members of this board, and they've just happened to be, coming to fruition at this point now. So, again, John, I'd be more than willing to meet with you at any time. We're under, like I said, confidentiality agreement and non-disparagement agreement right now as it pertains to this matter. If you have no other things to say on this, I appreciate your time, and I'd be willing to take your call anytime.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. So, moving on. Rockland Fire Station Building Project, Public Outreach Meeting Recap.
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to go set up over here. I'd
Yep.
like to show something, and while I do that, my only comment I'll make on that last exchange was there is no admission of liability on behalf of the town. None,
Yep.
period. So while I'm getting the computer set up, what I thought I would do, if it's okay, is to do a quick recap of the public outreach meeting we had for this fire station building project the other night. I won't go through in tons of detail because that whole meeting was televised and recorded by WRPS. It's available on the town's Facebook page. It's also available on the WRPS YouTube page, so folks can watch the whole presentation in detail as well as get all the hear all the questions and hear our answers. But I thought in this forum I should give you guys just a very quick update. I know Lori was in attendance, but others were not there. And I also thought I would highlight a summary of a few of the questions that were asked, excuse me, as well as I've created, based on some of the feedback I got, which primarily focused on financing and costs, I've prepared a new slide that I didn't have at the public outreach meeting, and I thought I would share that with you as well, because I think this is going to be, the financing is really going to be a critical part of this whole project. So this should go pretty quickly. Okay, bear with me. Sorry, I have
Right there.
Here we go. I think that's it. Using new technology live on TV is probably not always the best. Okay, I didn't want to do it this way. Sorry, give me just 1 second. I should be able to get it here. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, phew. All right, so I'm just going to zip through this pretty quickly. If you want me to slow down at any point, please feel free to let me know. Outline of the meeting, pretty standard introductions, goals and objectives, going over financing. The chiefs went over in detail why we need a new station. Architect went over plans, and then we did a Q&A. So we did introductions. It was the chief and myself, architects from Schwartz and Silver. Then we had a number of the fire station building committee members that were present. We went over some of the goals and objectives, which included the need for a building, the financing, some of the preliminary site plans, as well as the questions and answers. Generally, we talked about the need for a building. Essentially, it's too small, it's too old, and Chief Duffy went into more detail, and I'll show you some of those photos in a minute. As far as how we have financed this feasibility study, which is all the work that we're doing to bring to the voters, that was funded through ARPA. That was something I brought to the board. It's a legitimate governmental purpose of ARPA funds. But the key thing that I stressed a lot at this presentation, and I think this is a key point we're going to have to talk a lot about in the future, is in order to fund a new police station, there are no grants. For schools and libraries, there's the Mass School Building Authority, there's the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. They have an excellent amount of reimbursement that goes to towns. There's no similar state grant program for public safety facilities. There have been lots of bills proposed, lots of requests to the state to create that kind of program, because every community in the town needs a police and a fire station, just like they need a school and a library. So you would think the state would create a program like that. The legislature's not been able to find a dedicated revenue source. Those programs don't exist. So the only way to really do it is through a debt exclusion, which I'll talk about in a moment. At the meeting, you guys have all seen these charts before, so I won't go into it. I talked a little bit about where our money comes from and where it goes. Obviously, taxes and state aid are about 80% of where our revenue comes from. And as far as where our money goes, education is our single biggest category. That education slice also includes the VOTEC and the agricultural school. But there's actually more than that 42%, because a large part of our benefits go toward education. Even some of our general government budget, which includes our utilities, goes toward the schools. So most of it goes towards the schools. Obviously, public safety is the next biggest category, and certainly benefits are growing and growing over time. The point I should make on that last slide is there's no way to fund a building project like a fire station out of our budget. It just wouldn't be possible. We'd be cutting way past the bone. It would be not untenable. So the only way to really fund a new fire station is through a debt exclusion. We talked a little bit at the meeting about what that is, how it's a temporary increase above our levy limit, and that's the key thing, is that it's temporary. If voters were to approve this, they raise taxes to fund the project. When that debt service is complete over the life of the bond, 20 years, 30 years, whatever it might be, at the end of that life of the debt service, that tax increase goes away, and it goes back down to where it would have been without that tax increase. So it's a temporary increase, unlike an override, which is an operational increase, which is a permanent increase in taxes. So, for example, if we were to build a second fire station, which is a question that came up, that would require an override, because we'd have to hire new firefighters permanently to be able to fund that, as opposed to the project that we're proposing, which is a one-time or a temporary increase in taxes. Debt exclusions require both a ballot vote at a town election as well as a vote at town meeting. And our hope here, if we can continue to stay on track, would be to present that to you by your last meeting in February. And if you agree and you want to put that before voters, then you would vote at that last meeting in February to put it before voters, and it would be on the April election and then at the May 1st annual town meeting. And just as a side note, I think I've mentioned this before, only the Board of Selectmen can put debt exclusions on a ballot. Residents can put various petition articles on town meeting, but only the selectmen can put debt exclusions on a ballot. That's a very critical point. As far as financing goes, our bond rating is excellent. We maintained a AA stable bond rating throughout the pandemic, which we're all very proud of. As a hypothetical example, I just wanted to give folks in the audience a sense of what a cost could look like. We don't have any detailed cost estimates yet. We're too early in the process on this project. Hypothetically, a $20 million project would be roughly $156 annual tax increase for the average valued single-family home. And as you saw from the presentation from our assessing department earlier, the most current single-family home value is $446,925. So for a house valued at that amount, it'd be around $156 a year for the life of the bond. If your house is valued at higher than that, it would be greater. If your house is valued lower than that, it would be less than that $156 amount. And there's certain assumptions here which are conservative, 3% interest rate, 30-year term. Next steps, if this were to be put on the ballot in town meeting, and if it were to pass at the ballot in town meeting, we have to follow state law, which is the design, bid, build method. So we'd hire an owner's project manager, architect finishes all the drawings, go out to bid, and the project manager and the architect oversee construction. So then, I'm just going to zip through this, Chief, if that's right, and you feel free to interrupt me at any time. So the Chief then at the presentation went through a series of photographs to highlight the need for a station, and I think it's fair to say there were gasps in the audience when folks that hadn't been there before really understood the condition of the station. You can see from this image the original station built under a federal WPA grant in 1939, and then an addition built also with a federal grant in 1978. That's the station on Union Street. Here's our site. It doesn't show the lot lines, but you can see it butts up right against a house, the street, and the library. There's literally no room even just for adequate staff parking, not to mention the public or training or moving apparatus. This is the day room. I mean, it speaks for itself. This is the bunk areas, and we should highlight we have hired a few new female firefighters, which is fantastic for the department. We don't have separate living quarters for male and female firefighters, and that's not right. We need to create that. This, to me, is the most disturbing photo out of all of them, and this is not photoshopped in any way. This is literally the room between an engine and the turnout gear that firefighters have to maneuver. When this building was built in the, whatever that original date was, the 30s, the engines were a lot smaller. Right now, they're a lot bigger. And this is simply not safe for the personnel, not to mention hazardous because of all the diesel fumes and other toxins. Even though there's venting systems, there's still a lot of diesel fumes and other contaminants that get onto the gear, and it's not safe and it's not fair for our firefighters. This is a locker room, again. It's not even in the right part of the building, not even close to a bathroom, and obviously not adequately sized. The kitchen, the Chief has a lot of funny crack jokes about this, Brady Bunch kitchen and things like that. Again, I think it speaks for itself. This is another pretty disturbing photo. You've all seen it. It's the front of the station. You can't, and you can, if you look at the ladder truck and the engine, if you're a pedestrian walking down Union Street on this side of the street, you have to walk into the road in oncoming traffic if the engine is pulled out. There's just not enough room for the size of the apparatus today. These are just quick highlights. The Chief can go in detail. Then next we went on to some rough schematic architectural plans. The site that has been determined is the Lincoln School. There's been a lot of work done in previous years to look at other sites. Some of the questions from the community were asked, well, why don't we look at buying another site that's not in a neighborhood? And we did actively look at that. We looked at where the old Rite Aid was, the Dollar Tree, down by the Cavalry Church, down at the end of Union and Market Streets. The problem is we don't own that land, and the people that do own the land don't want to sell it to us. And we worked with Attorney Galvin. He helped us, reach out to the owners and really strongly inquire to try to acquire the land. and it's just not for sale. Eminent domain is really not something we think we should be pursuing for this type of a project. And even if they were willing to sell, all that would do is drive the cost up by millions of dollars because, you know, those properties are valuable. So we do have one site that is suitable, and I say suitable because it's large enough, and also the response time study that we did, that Chief Duffy presented many months ago from Dr. Jennings, did show that because it's so close, just a block or two from the current station, it can maintain all of our response times. So you can see Howard Street on the bottom, Church Street. This would obviously require the demolition of the Lincoln School. The apparatus would, at least the ladder truck, would drive in off of Howard Street in that lower left corner, and then go up and then hook a right, and that's the single drive-through bay. You can see the large ladder truck inside that bay. All the other apparatus would back in off of Church Street. All the vehicles, all the apparatus would exit off of Church Street. The parking lot on Howard Street is for staff and visitors. And there's different color coding here for the different kind of hot, warm zones, which we won't get into now. But needless to say, it's a very thoughtful design, but it is a constrained site in that it's kind of long and narrow. So it's, really trying to maximize the function while still fitting within the space. More detail on the plans, which I'll kind of skip by. Skip by those. These are a couple aerial views of the current site with the Lincoln School on it. And then here are a couple, and I want to stress, I don't even want to call these renderings. These are super preliminary massing models is the term they use, just to get a sense of what something could potentially look like. And one of the things I think you might recognize is, and Chief, remind me, what's the term for those skylights? They had a term, the architects had a term for that.
Clear stories.
Clear stories. So those kind of jagged roof line is nice because it allows a lot of natural light in. It's also oriented perfectly to allow for solar PV panels on the roof. And interestingly, the architecture of that actually harkens back to some of the other architecture in town, whether it's the sandpaper factory or just a block over on the corner of Park and Howard Street. The old factory that was recently demolished had that same design on the roof because that's a traditional design to let light into more industrial scale buildings. So that they're trying to harken that architectural history in town. Again, very preliminary. You'll see we have some screening along Howard Street. We know that's going to be important. You'll see there's a few solar panels over part of the parking lot. That could be increased to other parts of the parking lot as well. And you'll see on the back side there's a retaining wall with a fence and more screening. We're really trying to be careful of the neighbors. This is just from the reverse view, same building from the reverse view. You can see the engine outside that drive-through bay in the back. And then this is the last, again, just a super rough sketch of what something might look like. There were a lot of questions at the meeting. I'm not going to read them all now. Some of them did focus on the aesthetics of the building, especially from one of the abutters, and they asked about different materials. They questioned whether brick was appropriate in that residential neighborhood, and they mentioned other fire stations and other towns that have been constructed that looked more like huge houses. And when we discussed that with the architect, I think one of the issues, or two of the issues, is those other types of stations are much smaller. You generally don't see a single station for a large community like Rockland that looks like a house. It's just, those are for when towns have multiple stations. And also, we want to propose building something that's going to last, 50, 100 years, something that's substantial, won't require maintenance, is going to last. And so the materials need to reflect that as well. But this is all very preliminary. We're taking public comment. We want it to fit into the neighborhood. Again, recognizing that it's an interesting neighborhood, again, where there were factories and it's near other larger buildings. Before I get to my last slide, I just want to make sure I touched on some of the other. Yeah, I think I've kind of hit on most of those other comments. So the last point is a number of questions about debt. If we were to put this on the ballot and if voters were to approve it, or would we now be assuming too much debt? How do we compare to our neighbors with our debt load? What kinds of ratios do people, do communities look at to see if we're in the right place? So I did put something together which I wanted to share. and I know the font's kind of small, but this is a chart that we just put together, and it shows a ratio, which I think is a pretty important one. So it's debt service as a percentage of budget, also known as debt service as a percentage of revenue. It's essentially the same thing. And this shows all the towns in Plymouth County. The best practice that financial policies, the Department of Revenue, the rating agencies that everybody recommends is somewhere in the 5 to 10% range. You need to have debt to be able to invest in your infrastructure to maintain a healthy community, but you don't want to have so much debt that your operating budget is consumed by it and bondholders think you won't have an ability to repay it. So it's got to be at an appropriate level. So that 5 to 10% seems to be the rule of thumb. You'll see in this chart that the average among towns in Plymouth County is 7.2%. That's in the middle, the black with the hash marks. Now, all this data I pulled from the Department of Revenue. So the original Rockland data in this Department of Revenue data set that's behind this shows us at 6.4% because it's based on FY21. So I know that we have voted additional debt for our schools, which wasn't reflected in the DOR FY21 data set. So that hash bar to the right of it shows 7.8%. So that's our current FY23 ratio of debt, including all the school borrowing that's been voted as a percent of the budget. That pushes us up to 7.8%. So then looking at, well, what if we did a fire station? Where would that put us? So you'll notice and again, this is very rough, very preliminary. I'm using round numbers that are guesses at this point. But the reason why the bump isn't so big is the way that we've structured our debt most recently, especially with the school project, is not level service debt, which is common in many communities. When the town looked at issuing our last bit of debt, we went with the lowest cost over the life of the bond to taxpayers, and that involved a declining debt schedule. So there's high debt service up front in the early years, and then the debt service goes down pretty significantly. So over 3, 4, 5 years, we'll actually be losing $1 million off of our debt service. So, and if we were to approve a fire station, it's going to take a couple of years by the time we finalize the design, go out to bid, start construction, start paying bills. It's going to be a couple of years. So that increase from 7.8% up to 8.1% reflects the fact that there's an increase associated with debt service for new fire station, but it also reflects some of the savings associated with the current debt declining. And if anything, that's kind of conservative. That 8.1 could probably be a little bit lower because, again, this is a ratio, debt to budget, and in a couple of years, when this would actually hit the books, the denominator in that fraction, our budget, will actually be bigger because we go up by 2.5% a year plus new growth. So I know it's a lot of talking, but it's a short way of saying that this currently, and even with the new fire station, I believe that we're still within an appropriate window of what debt service would be for the town. Again, understanding that there's still other projects that need, and this is something that we did talk about at the public meeting, this isn't the last thing we need to do. We know that we're also working on a feasibility study for a new community center. We know we have significant water and sewer infrastructure needs. Those are water and sewer are generally considered outside of ratios like this because it's understood that as enterprise funds, those are funded, the debt service is funded from the revenues and fees that are generated, not from general property taxes. So, but still, residents will be paying those increases, and that's something that everybody's going to have to factor into their decision making, whether they can afford to pay for a new fire station in addition to all the other costs, whether they come from a debt exclusion or from water and sewer fees that are baked into rates, things like that. So I know I went quickly. I just wanted to give you guys a thumbnail of what happened at the presentation, some of this newer financial information, which I'm going to, this was only done in the last day or two, so I'm going to continue to work on the financial piece because my sense from the meeting, and Chief, you tell me if you disagree, was that everyone agreed with the need for a new station. Nobody disagreed and said, oh, everything looks fine, we should keep everything just the way it is. I think, the biggest question is, can we afford it? And certainly, as Lori asked at the meeting as well, which we'll do a good job of answering more in the future, is not only can we afford it, but can we afford not to do it? Because the cost of not doing this project is not free. There will still be some pretty significant operational and financial impacts associated with not doing this project. So that's all I had for this tonight. I'm happy to try to answer any questions you might have. Again, this is just to kind of keep this conversation going, and we'll have more to share in the future. Any questions on this right now? Made sense?
No, it was, yeah, no, it was really an excellent presentation, I thought. And, you know, just to let people know, we have to spend a lot of money to keep the existing station, things that people might not realize. Like, you know, customizing new fire trucks to go into into that size
Right.
station. I think, what do we pay, 675,000 for?
For a new engine.
For the new
Which
engine?
is
Yeah.
the typical cost of an engine, but there are, there are a few $1,000s in there, to make sure that it fits.
But that's a good point, Lori. I mean, we have to spend more money
Yeah.
to get smaller vehicles to
Right.
fit into a station that still is providing pretty tough clearances for people to get around them, to get in and out of their gear and on the vehicle.
Right.
So
And
it's crazy
there's-
to spend good money after bad like that.
Right, so I mean, you know, even if we did get the debt exclusion, and it would be a small burden on taxpayers generally, well, depending on, you know, but everybody's individual budget, I suppose. We wouldn't have those extra operating costs anymore if we had a new
Right.
station.
Yep,
So
that's
that
true.
would be an incredible savings. I'd love to see a list of costs associated with operating out of a small station, so we could put that out to the public as well.
No, that's a good point, Lori. And I just thought of one other thing I should have mentioned. One of the questions that did come up is, well, if this were to pass, what would we do with our current fire station? So I'll give the answer tonight, the same answer I gave at the meeting, which is ultimately that's a policy decision. It's up to the Board of Selectmen. My recommendation to the board would be to have you put an article on a town meeting warrant to request permission from town meeting to dispose of the building, meaning to sell it, most likely for some type of commercial development that could be mixed commercial housing that would, number one, generate one-time revenue to the town, which can be put into a sinking fund and help offset the cost of the new station. But then number two, it can put the property back on the tax rolls and continue indefinitely to bring more tax revenue into the town, which is also a good thing. There was a question about whether we've considered that the library potentially down the road might be interested in expanding because they're in the middle of their strategic planning process right now. I had a good discussion with the chairman of the Board of Library Trustees. It was an excellent conversation. We did talk about how they are in the process of that strategic plan. They know from the input they've received, as well as their own operations, that their building is tight, cramped, and they're out of space. And we did, we had a good conversation about it. She was very cooperative and said that, there's no one's looking to try to stop a much-needed fire station project, but just to make us aware that that is something that they are looking at. And I would say the same thing about this building right here in Town Hall. We are literally bursting at the seams. As you know, we're cutting up the conference room downstairs to make new offices. We have nowhere to put our files. There's a lot of needs in the town, but fire station, water, sewer, roads, those are, in my opinion, the most important priorities, and we're not going to be able to, I don't think, afford everything that we want to do. Nobody needs to make a decision on this, certainly tonight, but I would recommend that you all think about the future disposition of the building, because I think it's going to be a fair question that residents could ask at town meeting. What are you going to do with the building if this happens? And I think we should have an answer for that. We don't necessarily need an article that night, but I think a policy decision is warranted. So I would just tuck that in the back of your minds to think about, and we can put that on future agendas to talk more about.
Well, it would also help to consult a town planner.
Yep.
So I don't know how that's going.
Yep. When we get that person on board, we
Right,
can
yeah.
do that, but we've not hired him or her yet.
Right.
Does the board have any other questions for me? All right, great.
Thank you.
Sure.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ward.
I have a question for Mr. Wack. I'm just curious if there's any, are there any current debt exclusions that are nearing their expiration in the near future that you know of?
You know what, I've give me 1 second here.
Sure.
to find a more efficient way to get this done in future meetings. I apologize. I would say this, we had a public meeting, which I know you attended, and that's when I was prepared to do a lot of questions and answers. I wasn't really prepared tonight to get into questions and answers with the audience. So I'm keeping a list of questions, and I'll keep that in consideration for future presentations to the board and future presentations to the public.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the agenda. Announcement of successor collective bargaining agreement with Rockland Permanent Firefighters, IAFF, Local 1602. Doug.
Great, thanks, Mike. As the board knows, we have reached an agreement with the fire union, and I think both sides feel that a fair contract has been agreed to. As required by law, we just want to report that out for the public to be aware. Just a couple of the real significant highlights are, it includes a 2.5% wage increase in the first year. It's a 3-year contract. Probably the most significant change is a commitment to request from town meeting that the town withdraw the fire department from civil service. And that would include support from the union in that effort to withdraw from civil service. And in exchange for that agreement, the town has agreed in the contract to increase the education incentives, the education increases for firefighters. And it increases whether it's an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. And then lastly, there's some language revolving around specialty teams, which is something that has been in practice but hadn't been really codified in writing. So this would lay everything out so that everybody understands exactly how it works. So those are really the key highlights: the education, specialty teams, civil service, 3-year contract, 2.5% in the first year. That's all I have on that item.
Thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda, WN Realty LLC, billboard permanent timeline extension. Any representatives?
There are no representatives from them. I think there are a few representatives from the other competing billboard firm that the board did not select. I had been in contact with attorney Steve Gard, who does represent the developers that we chose. He's unable to attend tonight, but I told him it is okay. The bottom line is they have submitted everything. They got their local permit. And as the board knows, they have submitted everything to the Mass Department of Transportation, Office of Outdoor Advertising. So it's been pending with them. They have not approved it. They have not denied it. It's been pending. So we have a provision for a single 3-month extension in our host community agreement that allows for an extension as long as the developer's done everything they need to do and it's outside their control if a permit is pending for us to grant a 3-month extension. That's what's included here in your packet. So I'm recommending that we do approve this extension, which would expire on March 15th. The one thing I do want to highlight, and again, I know that there are some representatives from the other firm that are here, is the reason why we put this provision in the host community agreement is so we didn't lock up this site forever if it could never actually house a billboard, because there were questions about whether this site would ultimately be approved by the state, and we didn't want to have it just be tied up forever. So we negotiated and put in this time frame so there would be an end date. So I do think it's completely appropriate to grant this extension for 3 months. I think if it's approved between now and then, great, we'll be off and running. If it's not, then I think we'll need to discuss whether we activate the provision in the HCA which allows the board to terminate it, or whether you want to entertain something else. I think the concern that I'm starting to have is, I've been speaking with the head of the Outdoor Advertising Division of Mass DOT, and there's no legal, statutory, or regulatory timeframes that they're required to act under, and a number of these applications have been pending for years. So I think we'll see what happens over these next 3 months. I'll continue to push to see if there can, I just at least have a decision one way or the other. But if the answer in 3 months is it's just still pending, then I think we'll need to have more discussions at that time. Hopefully it'll get approved. We all agreed this site was the preferable site. It's across the highway. It's farther away from all the residents in Rockland. It is the better site, but it hasn't been approved yet by the state.
So you've reached out to Senator Keenan and
I
Dr.
have.
Coase?
Yep, I've reached out to both.
Have they reached out to the Department?
They said they would, so I assume they did.
Okay, if you can just follow up.
Sure.
To see that they did.
Yep.
That'd be curious on that, so.
So I would request a vote tonight to approve the extension for the HCA to March 15th, 2023.
I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to extend till March 15th.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay. Next on the agenda, other old business, not reasonably anticipated.
I have none.
Okay, town administrator's report and correspondence.
Thanks, Mike. So I will try to be quick, just to highlight a few of the things that I've been working on over the last couple of weeks. The fire station feasibility study and the community outreach meeting, that took up quite a bit of time, but I was really very pleased with it. And I think the chief was, as well as the others on the building team. So I want to thank everybody that helped prepare for it, as well as everyone who attended. It was well attended, very respectful, lots of great questions. So spent quite a bit of time on that. We've also been working on the Recreation and Community Center feasibility study. Timeline-wise, that is a little bit farther behind, but a lot of work is going on there. I already talked a bit about the budget, working with the town accountant on some of the initial forecasts. I've also been working with a consultant that the town hired a while ago, and we kind of put on hold on the Charter Review Committee. They are in the process of fine-tuning and finalizing they're calling it a policy memo, or I can't remember the exact term, but it's a memo where they've gone through and analyzed our total charter and have kind of flagged and highlighted things that they think they're going to recommend the charter committee, focus on. So they're finalizing that. I'm trying to set up the first meeting date just to get that committee off and running. Also been working with Dave Taylor, Jen Constable, the state, our engineers, and the private developers on the Mass Works grant that we received for the design of the Hingham Street improvement. We're still waiting for a lot of the contract documents to get executed, but we are aggressively pushing to continue as much as we can. Next, I'm working on a letter. I don't know if you got a copy of the email from the MMA urging communities to advocate to the Cannabis Control Commission that they promulgate interim regulations as soon as possible, and in particular, hold harmless communities like Rockland that have executed host community agreements, and to not retroactively force us to change those binding contracts and to cost towns like Rockland hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So, we've talked about this. I go to a lot of MMA meetings as well as MMA meetings, and this topic is right at the front of every legislative update, so they're on it. I'm going to be sending a similar letter on behalf of the board, urging the Cannabis Control Commission to use some common sense and just, implement it basically two ways. One way for communities that already have executed HCAs, and a different way prospectively for those that haven't entered into a host community agreement yet. And then lastly, I just want to thank everyone that was involved with all their efforts for the holiday stroll, both all the private volunteers, the town staff, the businesses, everyone. It was a wonderful event as always. And that's all I have, Mike.
Thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda, Selectmen's comments. Comments and opinions expressed by individual members do not necessarily reflect the views of the Board of Selectmen, and are the opinions and comments of only the individual member. Selectperson Childs?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody. The holiday stroll was, as usual, a lot of fun. Well, we can't comment on the shotgun. Can you give a personal opinion at all? Okay. All right, then I won't say, be kind to each other out there, and especially considering what happened in North Carolina with, they had a whole bunch of firearms and shot out in electrical grid, and it was just horrific. There's residents in Moore County without electricity now for about a week, and God forbid that should happen in Rockland. So just be kind to one another. My final comment.
Thank you, Lori. Selectperson Shortall?
I would like to thank everyone that was involved in the holiday stroll. It was very, as always, it was very nice. So I'd like to thank everybody that was involved. That's all I have.
Thank you, Donna. Selectperson Needham?
Hi, nothing new that hasn't been already said tonight, so thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Vice Chairman Nevin?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to extend my condolences to the family of Mary Stewart. Many of us know Mary from her service to the town of Rockland. She worked here as the executive assistant to the Board of Selectmen. She was a personal friend of my family, so just want to say rest in peace, Mary. You will be missed.
Thank you, Kara. You know, I have no comment. I was debating on commenting on things that were said during the course of this meeting, but I'll take the higher road on this one. And I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session with the Board of Health per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, Thomas Rubel versus Christopher Fackel et al.
So moved.
Not to reconvene. I got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Selectperson Childs?
Yes.
Selectperson Shortall? Selectperson Needham?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Nunn?
Yes.
And myself? That's unanimous. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.